The last 2 weeks have been very interesting for the entire MMO community. And that's all because a brand new studio has sprouted, with quite a few names backing it up, which you might recognize. And yes, as you'll see, it all also relates to Riot's MMO. And that's mainly because the name I'm trying to refer to is Ghostcrawler. Now, in case you don't know, Ghostcrawler, who was formerly the lead producer of Riot's MMO, has left Riot quite some time ago. At the time, the reason given was very simple. He just wanted to spend more time with his family, which I'm pretty sure everyone understands. But the entire time, in the background, there might have been a second reason why he left. And it all kinda bubbled up to the surface when he announced a brand new studio called Fantastic Pixel Castle, which would be working on its own MMO, codenamed Ghost. The first time people thought about it, everyone paused. Because now we have the former lead of Riot's MMO separating from Riot and making his own MMO. Even if it's just by tiny bit, because of this, some people lost some hope for Riot's MMO. Even though originally, when Ghostcrawler left, he assured everyone that the team that remains at Riot is stacked. And they have some incredible people working on Riot's MMO. Which I can confirm because I talked to those devs myself. They're awesome. But still, people hesitated, and it was only a few days ago that the studio got together, they started a stream, and they talked about what they are working on. Now, the first thing we have to mention is the team they have. Because this team is also stacked. Personally, I mostly just recognize people from WoW and Riot, but pretty much everyone you can see are the absolute top dogs of the MMO genre. Which is why the confidence in this brand new studio with its brand new project started to rise. After which, they got into some details. The core key of this MMO seems to be its blue and red shard system. Essentially, instead of just having one massive world where people just travel around, do questing and all the MMO kind of stuff, instead they have their own world, think something like Minecraft, which is the blue shard, and in this blue shard everything is procedural, and you really just have your own world where you farm your materials, you get some gear, stuff like that. Again, I am using Minecraft as an example because it works, it's very simple. But you can also think of something like Valheim. But then, after you get enough gear and you are ready to do something bigger, you can either keep jumping between the blue shards, because yes, you are not just tied to your one blue shard, you can actually keep switching worlds. Or you can hop into a red shard, where the red shard is a handcrafted world. It is not procedural, in fact, that's your classic theme park MMO experience. This concept is really interesting because it kinda unites what the MMO genre has been seeing throughout the past few years. Slowly, players started to appreciate quick bursts of gameplay rather than long sessions. Think of why Battle Royales became so popular. It's because, one, you go into that game mode thinking that you're gonna lose, so your mindset is set to having fun by default, because you know you are most likely not gonna win, but it's also because Battle Royales tend to be quick. So that entire modern mindset of quick gaming seems to be centered around the blue shards. Procedural experience where you can just hop in and out whenever you want. However, if you still want your classic, massive, time-consuming raids, that's all part of the red shards. That's why this entire idea is interesting. It's because it is trying to get the best of both worlds. In this case, literally. Because on the other side of this entire MMO spectrum, you also have classic WoW, which is the most old-school kind of MMO you can find on the market that is still doing well. Which is still mind-boggling because somehow no one that's working on MMOs is trying to recreate that kind of world. Yes, it is true that in a way you can't really recapture something that happened in the past. But I kind of wanna doubt that. Because I don't believe there has ever been a modern MMO that actually tried to do the classic stuff. Everyone is trying to be based on modern WoW, which I don't believe is the smart thing to do. I think there is a big audience looking for the old school experience, with no one really working on it. So now the question will be, will the red shards be able to recapture that? Now, what I also like about this system is that it all kinda feels like Terraria. I haven't played too much of that game, but as far as I know, you have your own world where you just farm out stuff and then you can just take all the gear you have into other people's worlds. Well, just imagine if that other world is just Onyxia's lair. I wasn't really a massive fan of the shard system until I started making these comparisons. But then I also realized that you can compare it to something like Animal Crossing. There you also hop between procedural worlds and yeah, it's similar. Then again, the team mentioned that they would like to have some kind of a housing or something to do in the game besides just combat, so maybe it is a good comparison. Anyway, one massive key feature the entire studio has is how open they are about everything. Personally, there is no confirmation here, but I believe this could ultimately be the reason why Ghostcrawler left Riot. Because yes, he did kinda announce the Riot MMO on Twitter. Out of nowhere. And I don't believe the PR team over at Riot was too happy about it. And then it seemed like he always wanted to talk about the MMO, but he never really got a proper green light for that. That's why he did a few interviews, but it really felt like he was chained down. Well, this new studio has the exact opposite perspective on all of this. They very specifically don't have PR or anyone who would tie down their communications so that the devs can just talk about the MMO. They want to show people what they are working on, they want to show people their ideas. And they want to bounce back those ideas so they would know what the players would like. I wouldn't really be surprised if this is something Ghostcrawler didn't like about Riot's MMO. Because Riot's MMO is very purposefully being kept as a secret. Like, no one has any idea what is actually going on. And in a way, that might be a time bomb. Because what if the community has a certain expectation, but it turns out the MMO is going in a totally different direction? Well, without being open, that might actually damage the reputation of the entire MMO. Which is why what the Ghost MMO is going for seems to be far more safe, but also far more efficient. If you tell people what you're working on, they can just tell you if they would like it. And in fact, when this team started talking about their game, Ghostcrawler came out and he confirmed how happy he is to just talk about stuff. And he even confirmed how his previous employers didn't like this approach, which might be a very indirect jab at Riot. But then again, I absolutely understand this. MMOs are a massive project. Feedback is incredibly important. However, this may not even be the best feature of this studio. That might be their pace. You see, as I told you, these guys are absolute veterans. They know how to make games, but they know how to make them quickly and efficiently. And that is what the studio is aiming for. They very specifically said they want to avoid the classic 7 to 8 year long dev cycle. And instead, they want to pump out the MMO a lot faster. Which, by the way, is kinda hinting that Riot's MMO might be in development for 8 years in total. Now we just don't know when they started. Anyway, to quote them, instead of being a massive, slow-moving juggernaut just like Riot's MMO, they want to be a quick, agile ship. And so, they are not afraid of just putting stuff in the game because it is fun. It doesn't have to go through approval, it doesn't have to go through PR. If someone thinks something is cool and everyone agrees it is cool, then they just put in something that's cool. In a way, this is how all the old school MMOs were made. Do you really think there was someone who would approve every single quest that was put into the game? Have you seen some of the quests in Classic WoW? And that's why this is sparking confidence in a lot of people. We have not seen an MMO made this way in a very long time. And what's crazy is that using modern tools, it should be possible to just pump out MMOs faster. You don't have to make massive budget games. Instead, you can make something smaller that just keeps growing. And so, let's see how this is gonna turn out. Now, of course, they haven't really shown any gameplay or anything like that because they are still prototyping everything. And we know about this because they talked about this in their stream. However, they did also talk about the world and everything around it. So, as you might see from some of the concept art they have shown, it is all gonna be about islands. Of course, it's referring to the shards. On one side, with this kind of overall design, some people might be missing that massive open world. Some people may not like the segmentations between the realms. But this kind of world also has a really strong point which it brings in. And that's the fact that as you keep evolving your world, because everything is on an island, then you can just slap in new pieces of land that may not have anything to do with anything else, and it kinda makes sense. From the design's perspective, with this kind of world, they can go insane. From massive jungles to massive deserts to just some kind of alien technology, they can do everything. And they can do it all because it has the justification of being on a different shard. So when it comes to their preparations for the future, this is a massive benefit. Now of course, we should also mention that this entire thing is a brand new IP, which in many ways might be a disadvantage. Because historically, MMOs based on an already existing IP were always doing better. WoW is an obvious example, but also think about Final Fantasy. So crafting something new from the ground up might be very difficult. However, because quite a few of these devs come from different IPs, they kinda know how the game is played. And so, when it came to, for example, the races, Ghostcrawler mentioned that they will not go for the classic elves and orcs. And it kinda makes sense why. First of all, that trope has been played so many times in the past. And so bringing in something new might be simply better. But also, League of Legends functioned exactly like this. League doesn't have your classic orcs and elves. But they always have something else or something similar, but not exactly the classic fantasy trope that was set up by Tolkien. For example, if you want something elvish, you might look into Ionia and have weird naturey people there. And if you want brutes, you have all the Vastaya in Noxus, for example. And instead of dwarfs or gnomes, you have Yordles. In fact, the entirety of League of Legends functions like this. If you think about it, League has never had the classic tropes. They don't have a wizard in a robe with a staff. Instead, they have a runic crackhead or a man that's just on fire. That's supposed to be your pyro mage. But never a classic wizard. And Riot confirmed that this was always on purpose, because it helped them separate themselves from all the other fantasy worlds. And of course, when all of this was happening at Riot, Ghostcrawler was still there. So it seems like he might be one of the people who took those ideas and now they are using them for their own MMO. So it may sound weird to say that this is gonna be an MMO without all the classic MMO races, but it did work in the past, so this might be a good thing. And then they also talked about the classes. When it comes to the classes in this MMO, they wanna go big. They will most likely go for the trifecta, that being the tank, DPS and healer. But instead of just picking a class at the beginning and going with it, they might go for a system where you craft your own class using the talent systems. And they did mention that they are aiming for about 20 different classes at the end. So don't expect anything massive such as Path of Exile. But it should be a little bit more diverse than what you would normally expect. And lastly, there is one more thing I really need to mention, because as I was watching the stream live, everyone kept asking about their funding. I don't know why, but everyone kept asking, how are they gonna fund this? Where is the money coming from? Like, are people asking this for every game that's being made? Do you know how MMOs were done in the past? It was 3 dudes in their basement. What kind of a funding do you think they had? In fact, I think this is playing into what this studio is going for. They wanna go as indie as possible. I don't think they care about massive projects. They know how to make fun games, and so they will just make a fun game. However, to still answer that strange question, yes, they are being funded by NetEase, which might start a shockwave throughout everyone. However, calm down. From what I know, in the vast majority of cases, these investors don't really force heavy monetization into the games. You might think they are the big greedy overlords, but no, those greedy overlords are actually the ones who are one step below them. it is usually the questionable leaders of companies. I'm not gonna throw any big names out there. And as a good example, I would actually like to bring up Tencent. Because whenever Tencent is being mentioned, everyone just freaks out. But it turns out, even though they are the owners of Riot, because they are their investors, they very purposefully let Riot do whatever they wanna do. Because Tencent knows the best way to make games is to let the devs just do what they wanna do. And they just give them the money to do it. They know forcing awful monetization into games is bad for the long-term investment. And for example, Tencent is all about the long-term investment. That's why if you ask the actual devs, everyone will tell you, yeah, Tencent's fine. But the community doesn't know this, because everyone thinks they are the greedy ones. Now, to be fair, I just know that this is the case with Tencent specifically. I don't know about NetEase, but I could assume they are in a similar boat. I mean, they are two rivaling companies, wouldn't they have the same interest? Then again, there are also some outliers, such as NCSoft, which has done a few questionable things in the past. Anyway, it seems like NetEase is really not gonna be any kind of big evil here. They just recognize that this studio has potential and they said, hey, you want some money for it? Just give us some money back and we're all good. And that's really how it all goes down. But yeah, this project does indeed seem like it has great potential. The devs are stacked, they have a clear plan, they are being very transparent about everything, and they already got some good feedback from the community. If their plan is to get something out within the next 2 or 3 years, I think there's gonna be a big surprise to the entire gaming community. And who knows, maybe they will reveal that the way everyone else was doing it so far was wrong. And I am ready to learn if that's the case. So Project Ghost seems good so far. I just realized something. It's called Ghost because it's named after Ghostcrawler, isn't it?